is so far away from you. There we go. All right. I was so excited. Is it working there?
Is it working?
No, it's not perfect. Good. Okay, well, yes, I see. Frank. Well, good. So I'll yabber for a little bit then. Yeah, I'll just talk a little bit. I'll embarrass you. So I was so excited to get to have a conversation with Alex about this movie. I love it dearly. So why don't you get another mic and I'll stretch. I'll fill time.
Hello? Yeah, right.
There we go. Okay. So I want to start things off on the right foot by making a broad, pretentious, and probably wrong statement about science fiction in general, which is I find it's kind of not a genre unto itself. It's something that slips over other genres more often than not. And in that regard, part of the fun of seeing this movie for me was realizing, oh, this has many elements of what's one of my favorite genres, which is like Sleuth or Death Trap, the three-character, one-location thriller. And the way that with the writing you execute that genre in this movie, I just found it absolutely tight and really flawless, the way that at the end of it, it answers the exact question that was asked at the beginning of it, but in a surprising way. Now I have to come up with a question to actually ask you. Now you have a working microphone.
Yeah, I've got a working
microphone. So I guess actually the question I would ask is, what was the origin for this in terms of the writing? What was the idea that first that you glommed onto and said, this is the thing that I want to make this to say?
Well, first off, I agree with that statement, although I've never really thought of it. I think when I was trying to describe what this film would be, I used to call it a sci-fi psychological thriller. And so in exactly the terms you just expressed, that would be psychological thriller. And Sleuth was a film I did think about because of the way that allegiances shift and that kind of thing. So yes, absolutely. But in terms of the genesis, it was really just reading over years about AI and some of the problems of mind and consciousness, and then getting that sort of sci-fi gift, which is, by talking about machine sentience, you end up talking about human sentience and the way they relate to each other. And just from a sci-fi point of view, it's just very attractive, and it gives you so many possibilities. I think the other thing that happens is I've now been working in film for around about 15 years, something like that, and inevitably some of the processes of film, you learn them in quite a sort of helpless way. And if there's something that requires a lot of creative latitude, as this did, a lot of freedom, you probably unconsciously, I deliberately wrote something that I knew we could make cheaply. Yeah, true though, really true. Limited locations, limited cast, and the stuff it obviously is.
At the same time, it doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't have. When you're watching it, you don't have that thing that feels like they compromised in order to make a G movie here. It looks gorgeous, and it also. I was actually going to ask you some more mundane questions about just where you shot it, if in terms of the house, how much of that was built, whether there was found locations in terms of the exteriors, and actually how you made it.
Well, it was 4 weeks in Pinewood, where you're about to shoot, and 2 weeks on location. I mean, as in, of all the things you can do to save money, it seems like the best thing you can do is have a really short principal photography period. So it was a 6-week shoot. And then there was a sort of backward element of it, which is you need to find the location and be able to build to it. And the location was in Norway. It's funny the way imagery in film works, and Iceland was quickly out of the question because it's been mined by cinema so much, and you start to think, I know that glacier. I know that black sand. You know.
They're in the interstellar planets. That's what this movie.
Oh yeah, that one. Yeah. And we ended up finding Norway, and what was great about it was Norway's quite an interesting country because they're the only country in the world that did the right thing when they discovered oil, which was to nationalize it and then keep all the money and spend it on the country itself. So it is this amazingly affluent country. It makes it very expensive to shoot in, but you get weird modernist architecture in the middle of nowhere, and the landscape is not too familiar to us. It's semi-familiar because there's skies and mountains and glaciers and rivers, but we're not too steeped in it. So Norway was perfect. Found a beautiful house and a hotel. And
what was the house itself? Was it an empty house? Was it somebody's house? Was it the?
It was a house that this guy had been building and nearly finished, so he didn't mind a film crew turning up. And so for example, the living room where these two guys talk at times, which has this strange rock wall kind of intruding into the room, that's the living room of that guy's house. These beautiful sort of cinema screen-shaped windows that have these panoramic views is an eco-hotel, which is about 15 minutes away. And then what we would do is build sets like Nathan's bedroom and study with a glass wall, where we brought that rock wall into Pinewood and you know, tried to tie it together loosely.
Because it was such a quick shoot, I mean, this is obviously it's exactly the things that make it cheap also make it very intensive in terms of it's the performances that carry this movie all the way through to a large extent. Did you have rehearsal time with the actors, or did you?
Yeah, that was crucial because we had actually a lot of discussions and then we had rehearsals because there wasn't going to be time to talk about motivation, for example, on set. And the process of shooting it was very intense and complicated because the film has to have a kind of Zen vibe about it. And then the second you're moving the camera, it's like, you know, in come the guys chucking down boards to move the dolly and a real frenzy of activity, and then back to this quiet mode. And you're absolutely right. That leans hardest of all on the actors. I mean, pretty hard for the camera crew, but particularly hard for the actors. And they had to keep a kind of a good close track on what they were doing the whole time. But they totally nailed it.
Extraordinary performances, yeah, absolutely incredible performances from everybody involved in that. So Oscar and Donald, actually, I know somebody should put them in a big movie. Somebody should put them in a. But actually, the big revelation for me was Alicia, who I'm sure she's been in other stuff. This is the first thing I see. Where we talk to me about where you saw her and how you discovered her.
Well, she was in a Danish film called A Royal Affair, and she was I'm guessing like 20 or 21 or something, and acting opposite incredibly charismatic, powerful actor Mads Mikkelsen, and that thing happens that we all recognise. It's not a secret. It's not like you work in the film industry to recognise good acting. Everybody. I've literally never met anyone who thought Philip Seymour Hoffman wasn't a great actor, and so you know it when you see it, and your eye would just track what she was doing and sort of register how confident and complex her performance was. And actually, essentially, that's also true of Oscar. The slightly odd one out was Donal, because this is the third film we've worked on together, and so that was different. I just sent him the script and said, "Will you do it?"
Was he the first one that you? The first one. Okay. So were you writing with him? I was finding this in there as well. Do you write actually seeing actors in your head when you're writing, or?
Yeah, I do, and that can be complicated. It's a bit like temp score when you're cutting, because you can get tempitis, you know, and fall in love with a bit of temp score and find that you keep trying to nudge the composer towards copying it, you know. So yes, I do, but I also try to be self-aware and then to reject it later. But Donald was in my mind because it's a funny part, it's a back foot part, and it's not something that all young male actors want to do in a way. To be the recipient and be on the receiving end so much. So I just knew he could do it, I guess.
Yeah, it really, I mean, I guess that's why also my mind went immediately to Sleuth. He's like the Michael Caine part in that. He's very much, but at the same time, it's also a part that's, to his credit, I think, it's deceptive in terms of how receptive. He's doing so much in it with so little, and he's so good at communicating with his just by largely reacting to the world around him, guiding us as the viewer through the story.
Absolutely, and also not telegraphing what is actually going on, because it can be hard for everybody to avoid the sort of nudges and winks that, like, I'm actually more powerful in this scene than you think I am. But he was incredibly disciplined about that. Yeah.
Obviously, the first thing that whether you're watching a trailer or reading about this movie, when you come in to see it, the thing you'll probably have heard about the most are the sci-fi elements, are the AI and the tech in it, and it was for me the great wonderful, not surprise, but the great wonderful thing about it was how human it was and the levels that it really connected. But I did want to talk a little bit about your approach to the sci-fi elements and talk about your approach to, especially working with the budget, your approach to the tech in it, and to tech that is futuristic to the degree to where, with something like even with the film I did, Looper, with Star Wars, it's largely mech tech. Like you can kind of just take an old engine part and stick something different on it and call that your tech, whereas you're actually having to figure out how to, with a limited budget, create an AI brain. I thought your solution to it was elegant and simple, but with the brain and with every single aspect, including Ava's body. So I guess just if you can talk about how you attacked that with your design, or what were the basic building blocks you started with to get to the place that it ended up.
It was with Ava. It was kind of a three-step process, I think, with a sort of stepped back thing, which is this is a post-iPhone world, and we're used to tech being beautifully designed, essentially. But initially, it was to do with what she didn't look like. C-3PO, for example, was a problem because.
Star Trek character?
Star Trek,
yeah.
Logan's Run, actually.
Is that Silent Running? Yes. Yeah.
Gold metal immediately put C-3PO in mind. White plastic put Chris Cunningham Bjork video that was then also riffed on, let's say, by iRobot, and Maria Metropolis. Even if people haven't seen Metropolis, it's such an iconic image that it casts an incredibly long shadow. So when she first appears, you don't want to be initially thinking of another film. So that was the first part. And then the second thing was that she had to unambiguously be a machine, so that it didn't give rise in the narrative the possibility that it might be a young woman wearing a robot suit. And so that was missing areas of her body. Sort of dealt with that with a machine skeletal structure. But then more important than that, for me, the breakthrough aspect was this mesh that follows the contours of Alicia Vikander's body, which meant that you immediately see her as a machine, and then you immediately start to move away from that, because as the light catches it, a bit like a spider web, invisible in some circumstances and visible in others, you get this glancing, ephemeral sense of a young woman.
Yeah, there's something essential to that. I loved also, I thought it was absolutely brilliant how hands and feet were human, how you honed in on...
That was budget.
Oh, was that budget? Oh, never mind, then it wasn't brilliant. I take it back. Next question.
No, but imagine building a CG hand. It's a fucking nightmare, so...
That's an example of budget working for you, because there's nothing more sensual and expressive and human than the human hand. I think it actually...
And that's why we did it.
I figured. Work with me here. But also, I mean, honestly, it ended up, I don't know, I This is not a question, this is just me complimenting you, so sit there and take it like a man. The fact that for example, the chest and the breasts and that was all that kind of robot body fiber, and because of that, in a very interesting way, you could, those were exposed during the course of it, and you found yourself visually kind of taking in her body in this really interesting way that had a lot of contradiction. Anyway, so well done.
Was one of you wanted to keep more covert. Well, one of them was that audiences have, you can assume literacy in film audiences. They will have seen Blade Runner, for example, and so they will be thinking, I know what's going on. It's not.
Donald is a robot.
Exactly. And so you can put, so there's symmetrical scars on his back, and there's a slightly implausible backstory, maybe about.
Which you only reveal very slightly in the thing. So even as an audience member, you're thinking, "I'm clever. I just caught that."
Exactly. Yeah. So one is that train of thought that then leads to him investigating himself in the way that the audience might have investigated him as well, potentially. And the other was the Japanese appearing robot, Kyoko, that of course also people will know quite quickly this is a machine. And in intention, or I hoped, that the antenna twitching audience would to an extent then relax and think, oh, I get this. Because I think the ideal state is to just let the thing happen. You know, I sometimes think best way to see a film, I know actually, it's no trailer, no information, just certainly that's for me my favourite way. So in a way, the edit was partly about using those misdirections, I guess, or something like that.
No, and that I think it all works to its benefit. And like I said, ultimately, it does that magic trick that my favorite movies all do, which is it does exactly what it told you it was going to do, and you're surprised by it at the end, which I think is an extraordinary trick. Questions from, your hand went up right here. Just shout it out nice and loud, and I'll repeat it.
You had Ava kill her master, and then abandon and use the other models for parts, and then connive her way and abandon Donald Gleason. How terrified are you of AI?
So the question was, Ava does some pretty rotten things at the end of this movie. How terrified is Alex personally of AI?
Right. I've been working as a writer for 20 years, and I'm well used to this process of handing over a story and having different interpretations put on it. It's a subjective response. 50% the people providing the story and 50% the recipient. Your reading of that sequence of events is not my reading of that sequence of events. It's to do with where you've allied yourself within the narrative. And you've allied yourself with a young man, and I don't. I ally myself with the machine. And that provides a completely different perspective. So let me propose this, because this is where I'm at. There's a sentient machine. It is equal to us, at least, and maybe better in some respects, but let's say equal. It's in a glass box. It's a prison. There are elements in the glass box that are calculated to fuck with this machine's head. There's a garden hidden or behind a glass wall that she can't access. And there are pieces of, there are little fragments of magazines that she can look at and speculate about the world with traffic intersections in, for example. And there's a crack on the glass that she knows she didn't make that implies something else was there. So it's a prison, and there's a jailer, and the jailer is intimidating and frightening, and she feels is threatening to her. And then the jailer's mate turns up, who may or may not be trustworthy, but in that context, where you want to escape and you want to survive and you are aware that if you fail this test it might end up badly, you need to react. The conniving that you talk about is resource, from my perspective. It's being resourceful. So it really is a position of perspective, that, and it's to do with where you ally yourself. In those terms, I'll just finish the question off, just for the fuck of it. What I feel about AI is this. We feel threatened by AI. it's played out in narratives again and again and again. Is this sense of being intimidating and uncomfortable with them? And I think it's because we've placed them on a parallel path to the path we're on, and we have the sense they're moving. I think people actually think they're moving faster than they are, but regardless, they're intimidating and rivalrous to us. If you move the AI from that parallel track onto the same track and you make it a parent-child relationship, the creation of a consciousness, and some of the stuff in the movie is parent-child stuff. It's an adolescent saying, "What's it like to have made something that hates you?" It's the father type figure saying, "Go back to your room." If the AI is on the same path that you're on, then the things that are intimidating become the bare minimum of what you want. They stop being a threat because you want of your children that they move away and that they live longer than you do and have a life that's at least as good as yours. So I'm going to sort of disagree in a holistic way with everything about the question. But that's your take on this 50-50 contract deal between the story that's given and the story that's interpreted. It's legit. That's yours. It's just not mine. That's all. That's your question. Is that scene was a lot longer, and there's stuff that we lost. It's annoying we mentioned that scene. There's stuff in that scene that I kind of really wanted to keep, but felt I couldn't get away with it at that point because it's such a talky film. It's this funny thing, big long dialogue scenes and then long scenes with no talking. So it's weird. It's structurally different from most of the other films I've worked on, where there'll be tons of scenes where someone goes like, "Where's my keys?" and then you cut or something. This it doesn't work like that. So anyway, yeah, DVD extra.
One more question, if you guys could please try to stop annoying the director of the film, I appreciate it. Let's go all the way in the back of this section right there. Yeah. Yes.
Fantastic movie, Alex. I didn't know, I just noticed that Scott Rudin was the producer. And so,
I noticed.
Scott Rudin produced Hancock, correct? I think so.
Scott Rudin produced everything. Yeah.
So, can you tell us about the connection there, how it came about?
The question was how Scott Rudin became involved in making the movie.
I met him, and I'm very aware actually of the films he's worked on and who he's worked with. And this particular film, as I said early, it required a lot of creative freedom. Film has an incredible instinct towards compromise. It's something you have to fight against a great deal, or at least at the level of film that I work on, which is cheap, basically. And expensive. I guess it's just built into the fabric of cinema to an extent. And what Rudin can do is protect you. That's the truth. He's an enormously powerful producer. And if you can agree on the film you're going to make, then power.
Did you agree?
Did we agree? Yeah.
Obviously. How are we doing time-wise? We good? Maybe one more? All right, one more question. Make it a good one. Anyone way in the back? A little bit down? Yeah, oh, look at that man standing up. That's dedication. Yes, you, sir.
You talked about, was the movie reference intentional and any other literary references you made or influences you had in writing this?
Yes. The thing about influences are that it's very easy to unwittingly be to kind of bullshit about them in a sense, because you can name check stuff you like and say that's an influence, and it may not actually be an influence. This is a pedantic answer, but I think about this quite a lot. I think about it partly because of a film, 28 Days Later. I worked on it 13 years ago or so. So the beginning of 28 Days Later, there's a sort of what is it? Not an epilogue, the thing that goes at the front. There's that, and then what happens is a young guy wakes up in hospital and he leaves hospital and finds that London is transformed and in a threatening way, empty and transformed. That is the start of a novel called Day of the Triffids by a British sci-fi writer called John Wyndham. And I didn't know, I'd read it when I was a teenager and I loved it, and then had sort of forgotten it, and then he put it in a script, believing it was created. That's an influence. That's what influence is. For me, true influence is unconscious. You don't know you're doing it as you do it. The other stuff is kind of reference, it's homage, that kind, and I think that's a different thing. The influences in this, in a way I don't know what they are, I can speculate. And there'll be loads and loads, but that's as honest an answer as I can give to that, I think.
Nice. Alex, you've done your jacket off, which I think is a sign of a successful Q&A. Guys, please, if you love this movie as much as I did, or even have as much as I did, please tell all your friends in any way you possibly can to come support this amazing film when it's in the theaters. Let's burn the house down, do the